What's up, y'all? It's me again, aka Rakxm, and I'm back to finish up Free Comic Book Days reviews. It's almost there, guys. We're on the last chunk. It looks like a lot. It is a lot, but I make do with what I've got. So we're gonna pick up right where I left off. As I said last time, it's the last little bit. So here we go. Starting us off is a great callback to the 1980s. We have Transformers Unicron. For those of you that don't know what Unicron is, think of a giant planet that is a living, breathing creature, also a Transformer, that also likes to eat other Transformers. And that's what Unicron is. Unicron is a massive world-eating Transformer. He first appeared in the Transformers movie, and yeah, like basically that thing down here is Unicron, and it's huge compared to the planet that it's eating. It's literally a planet-eating planet that is massive, eating Cybertron, which, as you can see, is much bigger than Earth, and Unicron is on his way to Earth. This comic also features crossovers with other series in the Hasbro universe, namely ROM. ROM is a space knight. If you don't know what ROM is, please feel free to check out any of the Hasbro crossover stuff that's been happening in the last couple of years. First Strike, Revolution, Reconstruction. ROM actually was in Marvel for a while. He did have some crossovers with like Venom and stuff. Recently, he's done a crossover with ROM and the Micronauts. So it's really good because you get to kind of see a little bit more of the Hasbro universe, also introducing a character that people have been waiting to come back since the 1980s because Unicron was kind of a force to be reckoned with. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Moving on, we have a comic that is called Barrier. Now, Barrier is done in a way that is frustrating to read, but it's still done in a it's still great because of the artwork. So it's done in the sideways reading format. And part of it's done in English, part of it's done in Spanish. I myself don't speak Spanish, so I actually had to go back and forth and read the English and translate the Spanish while I was reading. Now, what I did understand is that the two main characters are one, a cowgirl named Liddy, who lives in Texas, and a young man from San Pedro Sula, Honduras, is named Oscar. So Oscar's stuff is done in Spanish, Liddy's stuff is done in English, and Liddy is tired of refugees crossing her land because she's started to find horses that turn up dead, and she suspects that there are illegal aliens killing her livestock. Turns out she's half right about those aliens killing her livestock. It's just not the illegal kind. It's more of the UFO in the sky kind. And the title Barrier, in what I think, is a call to the language barrier that is broken once Liddy and Oscar are taken up to their spaceship. Because as soon as they're on that spaceship, I feel like everything changes based on the fact that, they can... they're going to have to learn how to communicate. So we'll see. We'll see. Next up, speaking of comics that are done in an infuriating way, we have the Disney Princess Ariel issue. I guess that people have been waiting a long time to see Ariel. There is actually a series that I follow on Tumblr and Instagram. Maybe not Instagram, I don't remember. Called Pocket Princesses. And what it is this artist does miniature, like little one-panel comics of all of the Disney princesses and characters that are that are in that same kind of category. Princess Leia's been in there. You've got other characters like Kuzco's shown up a few times, and in one of the more recent ones, it showed Ariel holding a copy of this, super excited, and all the Disney princesses are so excited for it, and it's really cute and it's very heartfelt. Anyway, I'm off topic. The Disney Princess issue, as with Barrier, is printed sideways, and while it works for what they're doing, it's also very frustrating to read, because the only time a guy looks at magazines like this is when it's a centerfold, and usually there's a third thing that flops down, and this is a kid's comic book, so I don't think that's what they were going for. However, it was very fun, it was very silly. It did make Ariel kind of look like a ditz, though. And given at the beginning of The Little Mermaid, she did kind of have that happened. She did kind of have a ditzy personality, but it was a little bit over the top ditzy. So maybe she's supposed to be like a younger Ariel, but I don't know. We'll see. Next up, we have a comic called Relay. It looks awesome. It starts off with this gentleman landing a spaceship on an alien planet and going up and introducing himself to the locals and helping them to basically build a civilization where there wasn't one before. He teaches them how to agriculture, not how to agriculture. He teaches them about agriculture. He helps them build a dam so that they don't flood every year. And he basically just helps them build this amazing, amazing, you know, not super primitive anymore kind of culture. And it all kind of goes to shit when he ends up accidentally killing someone that attacked him, so he had to kill them. So it wasn't really on accident. He killed someone straight up. And that started a war, and he leaves, but the ship monolith that he lands in, this massive, massive structure, stays behind. And eventually, like, cities just build around it, like metropolises build, not that metropolis, but you know. And this monolith goes to like monoliths land on every single possible planet you can imagine, and it's basically just this huge network of monoliths building these civilizations from the ground up. And it's exciting. I love it. I'm really happy to see it. And it's very cool because I actually just took a whole class on cultural anthropology. So seeing that, you know, this is like the kind of stuff that would happen that would turn primitive people to the ideas of gods. Like legit, they're going to be worshiping this massive monolith for generations. This thing stood above skyscrapers in the futures. So, I mean, that's God material right there. And I'm excited to see where the rest of this series goes. So, moving along because I'm getting excited about something. I'm pushing time really hard nowadays. Next up, we've got Ghost in the Shell Global Neural Network. I know zilch about Ghost in the Shell. I know it's an anime. I know it was a manga. I know that they just made a movie with Scarlett Johansson, and that's cool, except they whitewashed it, and everyone hated it. But what this is about is there's a girl who has to hunt down a person that doesn't want to be hunted down, but there's also someone protecting that person, and then they end up fighting each other. Turns out they were former like partners in crime kind of stuff. And it's a very fast-paced, action-packed story that they actually do all the explaining as to who these two characters are in the story. So it's not like that you need a whole lot of previous experience with the story. So that's cool, and I very much like that. Next up is one of my current favorite TV shows to watch. This is a 3-story compendium. Is that the right word? I don't even care. Of Bob's Burgers. Bob's Burgers, Free Comic Book Day 2018, takes a story for each 3 of the Belcher children, and it's exactly as ridiculous as you would expect. The first story is called Tina Tanic. It's basically Tina's erotic friend fiction of the Titanic. And she starts out as the captain of the Titanic, gets distracted dancing with Jimmy Jr.'s character, who is, you know, one of her first mates, and they crash into an iceberg. And luckily for them, they have all the equipment on board needed to rebuild the hole in the hull. Hole in the hull. Yeah. And they can dance the night away while all of the crew is working their butts off to fix and make sure they don't sink. Because that's what happens in Tina's erotic friend fictions. Yeah. The next one is a Louise story. It's called Bizarre Bazaar. And bizarre like weird, bizarre like a market place. And it's Bob and Louise shopping for the new ingredients for the burger of the day. And Louise is throwing out all these ideas. She wants to get caramel corn and make a rub my caramel corns burger. She wants to try, or Bob thinks they should do hustle and Brussels sprout burger. And then they find a tent with a creepy old lady who offers them pineapples that will basically force anybody to do their bidding. And Bob buys or uses it and makes them on the burger of the day, and people literally lose their shit eating these burgers. Like, Jimmy Pesto comes across the street and falls in love with these burgers. And like it's basically like Dawn of the Dead with all these people swarming this restaurant to get their hands on these burgers. And it's just great because, at the end of it, Bob realizes his mistake, and you get to see a whole bunch of the characters that everyone knows and loves on the show. You've got Mr. Fish Odor, you've got, as I mentioned, Jimmy Pesto, you got Mort, you got Teddy, you got Marshmallow, who is my personal favorite in the show, and you've got the old bitchy lady that runs the art store. It's good fun. Um, and then the last one is one of my favorite parodies that I've read in recent years. It's Gene's story. It's called Where the Fried Things Are. And it is done in the style of Where the Wild Things Are, which is exactly what it's a parody of. Gene feels like he's being neglected and abused by his family. Not necessarily abused, but they don't understand who he is as a person. So he gets on his bed and sails across the sea to the faraway land where he meets the fried things. You've got the bunny rabbit french fry, the nerdy tomato, mustard and ketchup, all of which are representations of his family. Because why the hell not? And of course, as with Where the Wild Things Are, he has fun, he plays, and then he realizes, you know what, life at home's not so bad. And he gets home and he finds that his parents have left him a burger and fries on his nightstand because they still love him and they understand that he is the way he is, and they still love him for that. And then he also has some cheese that he keeps hidden under his blankets for some reason. I don't know. Next up, we have Shadow Roads. Shadow Roads, the best way to describe it is there are intersections of our dimension and the shadow dimension at various locations throughout the earth, on the earth. And this story involves a Native American that is very well educated. He has gone to, study abroad. He has learned, and he has basically done everything he can to gentrify himself, except for change his skin color because that just wasn't available at the time. And he ends up meeting a shaman who gives him a blade from his native people. And while he is traveling, he ends up on a train with his good friend who is also really racist and a ginger, an evil ginger. And while they are traveling through a tunnel, they run into some monsters that should not exist in our realm. And they end up running, and it gets its head blown off by a bounty hunter who explains what the crossroads are. And this story is just very well done. Its artwork is stunning. It's very fun and action packed, and I am very eagerly looking forward to reading the actual stories of Shadow Roads. I mean, it starts up soon, or even a little bit ago. I don't know exactly when, but I'm gonna pick it up because Shadow Roads sounds like a good story. Um, Next up, we have a preview for the Amazing Spider-Man that's about to start off again because they're doing the renumbering thing again. I love it when they do that. Not really. But this kind of just shows how Peter Parker is readjusting after the whole thing with Dr. Octopus taking over his body, and he has now dealt with Civil War, and he's just looking to settle down in a normal lifestyle. He moves into a new apartment with his already roommate, and a new roommate moves in who turns out to be the Boomerang. So that should be fun because Spider-Man and one of his villains are living together now. Because why the hell not? This next one I'm not actually going to talk about. I'm going to show it to you because I love it. It's the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Shattered Grid Free Comic Book Day issue. I'm going to talk about this when I actually do a full review of Shattered Grid, because Shattered Grid by itself deserves at least its own piece because it's been such a great story so far. So like I said, I'm going to skip right over that one, but we'll come back to it eventually. So yeah, moving on. Next up, we've got Legend of Korra. I know zilch about the Legend of Korra. I do know that it's the follow-up to Avatar: The Last Airbender. I never watched that show either. I know that there's a guy with an arrow on his head. That's it. This story was cool. It was kind of like, it definitely wasn't about Korra herself. It was about a little kid that was helping find lost pets. And he actually wasn't supposed to succeed. He was one of those people that everyone was just giving him a bullshit task to keep him busy. And he ended up finding all of these missing pets, as well as a homeless guy that needed a home. So they did that. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know anything about Cora. There wasn't really any explanation as to who she was as a character to begin with. But I'm assuming if I read the or watched the series, read the comics that are involved, it would make more sense to me. Um, Also, in this Legend of Korra issue, we have a story called, oh my god, I think it's Arms. Arms, yeah. So what it is there is a mutation that has been discovered in humanity, really, recently, where they develop these spring arms. Certain humans develop that springy arm thing, and the only way for them to control it is with these special masks. And Arms is actually supposed to be a video game coming out, or it has already come out for the on the Nintendo. And this is basically just the story of Arms, and there is like a league of fighters for the what they call the Spring Gym. And yeah, so it looks like a pretty good story. I'm actually very interested in how the game is played, but we'll see how it goes from there. Riverdale is a series that's blown up on the TV shows as well as the comics. I know Archie from Archie comics, the old stuff, like the 1990s and before comics, because that's what I grew up reading. This Riverdale series actually takes the characters and gives them more of a grittier reboot type of thing, which they've already done a couple of times, but this is more modern reboot kind of thing. It's basically this issue is Doc who, or I'm sorry, not Doc, Pop, who owns the Pop's chocolate shop, is sitting down and just telling stories to Betty because Betty's doing a report or a news article or something like that. Um, yeah, it's a thing for her school paper, and he's just kind of telling her stories about weird things that he's had happen at the shop. And it's really cool because he's just talking about things that have happened in town and things that have gone wrong, and he eventually gets to a story about a handsome young fella that wanders in off the street, and because it's just a soda and ice cream shop, it's not doing so great. Pop is losing business. This guy comes in and says, "Hey, why don't you grill me up some burgers?" And Pop's like, "All right, I got some burgers in the back that I was gonna have for dinner, but you know what? Money is money. I will take what I can get." He grills them up, gives them to the gentleman, and the gentleman tells him that they're the best burgers he's ever had. And he says, "Look, man, I want to help you succeed. Is there anything that I can do, or is there anything I can do to help?" And basically, Pop just says that there's some business in town that's kind of pushing him out, and he ended up. Well, turns out he made a deal with the devil to make sure that his shop succeeded, and every other shop that, or every other restaurant that started to become competition would go bye bye. And it was kind of heavily implied throughout the story that that's what was going on. But this, if you look in his reflection, there is definitely horns on his face, which is a dead giveaway that he made a deal with the devil. I think that's really cool because, I mean, I like that Archie Comics has been getting darker with their stories, especially when they've been doing all of the Madhouse stuff. Or not Madhouse, yeah, Madhouse. Like Afterlife with Archie, Jughead the Hunger, and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm hooked. I actually want to really start watching Riverdale. It's just a matter of whether I can or not with time and such, being a college student with a job and such. Next up, we've got Howard Lovecraft, Big Book of Summer Fun. I love H.P. Lovecraft stories. They're one of my favorite stories to read just because they're so dark and they really make you think about the human condition. However, this, not so much. It was, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of the cover just because it's that weird CGI comic crap that they do. However, the interior artwork is actually very nice. It's very Tim Burton-esque. It's just the problem is there's not a whole lot of exposition for kids as to who Cthulhu is. or who H.P. Lovecraft is for that matter. And it was hard for me to get through because it was just so not H.P. Lovecraft, to be honest with you. And then there was a preview for a series called Steam Engines of Oz. I actually look forward to that one. I do love the steampunk adaptations of stuff, and The Wizard of Oz is one of my favorite stories of all time. So seeing that in a new way is always fun. So that issue isn't a complete wash, just mostly a wash for me, mostly. But we'll see. We'll see how that Steam Engines of Oz does. Next up, we have Overwatch. Overwatch is a video game that got real big real fast. I still know zero about it. So all I know from this issue is that the big girl with the pink hair is racist against robots because robots are the bad guys in Overwatch, I guess. So they have to team up to take down an intergalactic threat that ends up being a bigger problem than either of them, or not intergalactic, intercontinental threat. I don't know if I'm using those words right. All I know is that there's bad people that they need to find, and they need to work together to do it, even though they don't want to. It's actually really interesting. I did very much enjoy reading through it, and the artwork is actually really good. It's like really well done artwork, very detailed, a lot of, characterization. Each face is different. But again, I don't know enough about it to make a judgment call on the series. And then the other half of this story is the sequel series to a story called Black Hammer, which actually came out last year, I believe. And it's basically a mockery of Black Hammer is like making fun of the generic superhero teams, like the Justice League, the Avengers. The main character of the Black Hammer stories was a character named Black Hammer, who carried a big black hammer. Well, this particular one is making fun of the Legion of Superheroes. They're holding auditions for the new heroes, and they end up one of the team members that shows up to audition ends up walking in with the hammer that was owned by Black Hammer. So it's kind of a really cool follow-up, and the team that is in this one is actually called the Quantum League. So I'm going to be checking that out after I read Black Hammer itself. So yeah, Overwatch overall was a pretty damn good issue. I'm actually very happy with it. Next up, we have Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, just in time for when they released the Infinity War. This one, you get to see a little bit of the older characters. So you've got Odin, of course, and Black Panther shows up. And Black Panther is basically talking to Odin about what happened back at the dawn of time. The dawn of time introduces us to all of the original Avengers. And by original, I don't mean the 1963 team. I'm talking about the first Black Panther, the first Sorcerer Supreme, the first Starbrand, the first to wield Mjolnir, which was Odin himself. And the story actually talks about how they took down a Celestial. Now, that's not an easy feat. That is something that is insanely hard to do because these Celestials are effectively gods. And apparently the Celestial is waking up and coming back for revenge. So that's fun. And now the new Avengers teams need to work together to bring down the Celestial that their forefathers brought down. And this new team of Avengers has actually got a pretty damn good roster. It's got, a lot of the faces that usually are on the Avengers. You've got Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, Black Panther. It's also got Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, the Ghost Rider Robbie Reyes, and She-Hulk. So, I mean, that's exciting, and they're doing it again where they kick off a new number one, and I hate that because they're so damn close to number 700 for the Avengers, but they're rebooting it before they get to 700. I don't know why. I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know why it pisses me off so much that they're doing it, but they're doing it, and we're just going to have to deal with it. Yeah. And then at the end of that issue, we've also got a short aftermath of Secret Empire, dealing with how Captain America can fit back into society when society is split over Captain America, literally. there's one side that wants Captain America to be Hydra, and there's another side that wants Hydra gone permanently. And there's one woman in particular that wants to just keep making everything a huge mess. So she brings in an army of nukes. I don't mean nuke as in... I mean nuke as in this character that's got a flag tattooed to his goddamn face that takes different kinds of steroids to give him different kinds of powers. And when I say an army, I mean she's been cloning them. She's been cloning nukes to fight against Captain America. And, I mean, Nuke is hard enough on his own, but throw a few of them at someone, they're downright screwed. Well, next up, we've got a series or a comic called Die Kitty Die. I Love You to Death. Die Kitty Die. It looks like it's supposed to be a parody of most of the '60s comics. Like you've got a Casper the Friendly Ghost character. Most of these characters look like they're from Archie comics. It's basically like underworld type stuff. Now, the first comic is called Little Kitty School Days in The New Kids to Die For. So it shows Kitty, the titular character, interacting with a werewolf boy and the impersonation of death in child form, as well as other characters, and basically making friends with death and trying not to die. And then we get on to the story, Stop, This One Will Kill Her. Now, I didn't like it, truth be told. There was a lot of exposition, or not exposition, there was a lot of explanation. They did explain a lot of stuff, but it was a lot of, like, product placement for their own stuff. They kept talking about how the older issues set up this, that, and the other, and it was just... It felt insulting to the reader, to me at least, as a reader, to have to try and sift through all of that. It just wasn't my thing. And I got to be honest, I got really tired of all the parodies that they did pretty quickly. Like this, for example, is the last page, and it's got a bunch of angels with Archangel's modified costume. Archangel from the X-Men, like the ring on their chest, the blue and white color scheme. It's all just, it's a little much. So like this one just really, really wasn't my thing at all. That being said, I'm done being negative for now. Actually, I think I'm done being negative forever with the last few. We're on the last stretch, guys. We have 5 left to talk about. So first up, we've got Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, Zero's Journey. Every time Tokyo Pop does an adaptation of a Disney movie or a Disney-esque movie, I love it. I don't know why. I love Disney movies as it is, but seeing them on manga format it's great. And this one was done in full color. Most manga, for those of you who don't read manga, is done in black and white, but this was done in color. And this is actually a follow-up to The Nightmare Before Christmas, where Jack is trying to figure out a way to build a device to make it so that he can travel to each of the different holiday worlds just with a flick of a button. And Zero ends up getting sucked into that portal and ends up in Christmas Town by himself. And that's, as I'm sure you can imagine, is problematic. Now, this comic has actually been already come out. So, yeah, number one already came out. I think number 2 is already out. And I'm excited to see how Zero does in the other worlds. Like, that just sounds like a fun time. And, I mean, if you've never seen Nightmare Before Christmas, you need to watch it, first of all. And then you need to read that. Because, let's be real, who doesn't love ghost dogs? Speaking of dogs, we get to Street Angel's dog. I don't know who Street Angel is. From what I understand, she's a skateboarder badass that is a badass. The comic starts off with a group of douchebags beating up on a puppy. I don't know why. I don't know what their deal is, but they are. And Street Angel comes to his rescue with a flying punch and literally just decks a kid and decides to adopt the puppy and takes him to get him patched up and basically just tries to use him to get money. They go on adventures. She kicks some ass. And as time goes by, he really starts worrying about his life. And everything, gets better for the dog when the dog that she thought was a he is actually a she named Princess that has been lost. And so she does the right thing and takes Princess home and gives her back to her owners. And Princess at the end, you know, she's a soft, cute, cuddly puppy, but she kept the badass studded collar because she did have fun. And Street Angel caught my attention because of this particular Free Comic Day issue, as a lot of Free Comic Day issues do. So I'm excited. I actually really want to check out what Street Angel is all about, and I probably will. And if I do, I'll do a review for you guys, as I will do with anything else. So yeah. Moving on, we've got the Star Wars Adventures Free Comic Book Day, which is a prequel to the Solo movie that just came out. This one it has not Ben. Ben Solo is someone else. Has Han Solo interacting with what's his name? Zuckuss and I think Forlom, bounty hunters. The bounty hunters that look like testicles. And he's basically trying to protect a kid who ran away from home and collect the ransom for him. And I mean, it's a fun story. It's Star Wars. I mean, everyone loves Star Wars. I mean, most people love Star Wars, and I mean, it's enjoyable. You get to see Chewbacca in all of his Chewbacca-ness glory. Han Solo is being a smartass. Oh, I am sorry. It has been a day and a half today. But last two. So we got the Pokemon Adventures Sun and Moon. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is actually part of the Pokemon Adventures series. This one is done. I mean, Sun and Moon, from what I understand, was a very different game from the rest of the Pokemon games. I never read it, or never played it, rather. And from my guess is because it was such a different game, the comic is going to be very different from the other Pokemon Adventure stories. So it was done in a very youthful way. Like it didn't seem like a very, Pokemon Adventure story. Mostly because the Pokemon Adventure stories up till to now have always been very more mature than the comic or the cartoons ever were. But it is what it is. It has Sun and Moon interacting with Team Skull or the Skull Gang or whatever the hell their name are. He's trying to find those what are they called? Pukimuku, and he has to throw them from the beach back in the sea. Team Skull will pay him, and after they cheat him out of his money, he ends up attacking them, and yeah, that's in essence the whole story. And then he ends up leaving, and then they did another one that's called Pokemon Horizon Sun and Moon Traveling Trainer Tokyo. This one, if the first one was juvenile, this one was even more so. Yeah, it just, I don't know. It was just, these ones were kind of rough to get through. I love the Pokemon Adventure stories, but I was not a huge fan of those two. Sorry, Nintendo and Viz Comics. It is what it is. The Mall is the last one I have to talk about, guys. This is it. Last one. The Mall is done by Scout Comics. Everything Scout Comics has touched is gold. They're the ones that did actually Stabbity Bunny. That issue sold out everywhere in Austin in less than 3 hours. I only got my hands on one because I got lucky. One of my friends picked up 2 copies and gave me one. The Mall, anyway, I'm off topic with Stabbity Bunny. The Mall is very 80s. It starts off with the story is about a young man who ends up working at a piano store. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, people don't buy pianos very often. Only very committed pianists buy pianos. It turns out it's a laundering company, and one of the guys the kid that ends up working there ends up making a wager with somebody for about $3,000. It was the money he'd gotten in a recent laundering deal. He bets on a video game, against a nerd of the 80s, or not a nerd, a jock of the 80s. He's the nerd, and ends up winning a date with with the jock's girlfriend. Um, and things go downhill. There's some mob dealings that go down, and before the end of the comic, everyone's had a gun put to their head at one point or another. So it's very intriguing. It's very well done. The cover looks like it's going to be like a black and white, maybe a couple extra colors thing, but the interior is full color. It feels very 80. You've got all the cheerleaders sitting together at the table wearing their Letterman jackets. You've got all the jocks, hanging out together wearing their Letterman jackets. And of course, you've got the whole putting the quarter on the machine way of saying I've got next dibs on the game, which is all very 80s. Yeah, so I mean, this year, guys, had a pretty damn good haul. I'd say my top, picks for the year, as far as the ones that I am most excited to read, or was most excited to read before I read them. Number one, of course, was the Power Rangers Shattered Grid. The Shadow Roads, I'm really excited about reading more about. Relay, of course, was one of the ones that was really good. Unicron, just because I've been getting back into these Hasbro guys, they're been doing a good job. And then I got to go back a few weeks to figure out. The last one was the Meta Baron. Now I got to read the rest of Meta Baron, but those 5 were my picks for this free comic book day. And again, if you guys didn't get a chance to pick them up, you can check online, try eBay. I actually have a few extras that I picked up, so I mean, I don't know how that would work, but I have them in case you're interested. So yeah, guys, that concludes Rakxm's review of Free Comic Book Day 2018. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep your eyes posted. More review stuff will be coming down the horn, and I'm glad that I hope you guys enjoyed. I won't assume you enjoyed, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll continue to be putting out new content. Like I said last time, it's pretty much daily at this point. And yeah, I look forward to sharing more with y'all on my opinions on more comic books. So until next time, guys, peace out.